Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our session today. We are going to be going through and doing some sports analytics. Let's go past that. We're going to start off with learning how to access and analyze the data for your favorite NBA team, which will be fun. Basic safe harbor, just to let everyone know. Give that just 1 second. In this session, by registering for Pi Day, you do get accessibility to have a free trial. So you should have already likely gotten whitelisted and provisioned your tenancy. If not, we will take a few minutes at the beginning of the session to step you through and make sure that you're not having any issues with that and get you started. You can take a picture of the QR code, but ultimately you'll need to get it installed on a machine. So in the Zoom information, you're going to see a Q&A button in the Zoom. Please use that to be able to ask questions about the session, any problems that you're having. We have lots of people available to answer questions and help step you through these problems or questions you have. You can also register for the Slack channel, and we're going to drop a couple of links in here for you to make sure everyone can access the content. So you're going to also see a raise hand button. So let's start with this chat. I'm going to paste a link into the chat that will be the step-by-step instructions for you to do the lab. If everyone can jump out there and see if you can download that link. And for those of you who are willing, go ahead and throw your raise hand up just so I can see in general. We'll clear out the raise hand. Just wanted to get a pulse to make sure everyone's able to access that link and download. So give everyone a second to pull that up and make sure you can get that. Someone can raise their hand if you're able to. If you're not, maybe post something in the Q&A so we can see that you're unable. Okay, we're getting some hands in there. Great. The next link is going to be a link that allows you to join the Devrel Slack channel. If you click on that, it'll help step you through joining it. This is where the experts are going to be online as well. Another avenue if you don't like to use the Q&A within Zoom. So you can collaborate in line on a Slack channel with someone and ask questions. All right. So we're going to go through and do some introductions, overview of what we'll do today. Like I said, we're going to make sure that you have access to register and get into that free trial. You'll see that for this lab, the rec is to have a free trial for this. If you are an existing OCI customer or you want to try to implement in an existing item, please submit a Q&A or go to the if the Terraform isn't working, it does create a new compartment. Samuel's going to cover that for you, but we may not be able to get to all the questions because this was designed from a time perspective to cover that it's a brand new clean tenancy. You also have to have a GitHub account. So you will need that at the section after we prepare resources to get the Mba Api. This is the crew that's with us today. I'm honored to be presenting with them, smart crew of people. Simon Weisser is a cloud engineer that assisted in writing the Python script with the help of Macdonald. He oversaw, is kind of our, he gets all the roadblocks out of our way as we go. And Simon wrote the code to be able to implement the access to the API, as well as getting it written into an ADW database. Aaron is here. He has been helping us with provisioning all of the services and getting all the logistics of the system up and running. Samuel is a whiz at Terraform. He wrote these amazing scripts that allow for us to go from, in 15 minutes with a brand new tenancy, installing not only a tenancy or the ODS and OAC and ADW and generating a VPN and having a form that if you want to install even more products, it gives you that flexibility for all that to be automatically done for you. So excited to be there. I'm here representing OAC, run OAC if you guys haven't seen the shirts yet. where we're going to be stepping through a lab, accessing some of this data that we're pulling in from the API, and doing some analysis on 2 and 3 point shots. It'll give you to be able to learn a little bit about OAC and how to build visualizations, create data connections, and so on and so forth. So here's the overall steps we're going to do. We're going to execute this Terraform script that Samuel wrote that is going to provision all the needed services for the lab. And then we're going to use a notebook session in the data science platform to execute some Python scripts where we're going to access the public API and then load that data automatically into ADW, create a connection in OAC, and do some analysis. So just before we get started, I want to make sure you guys know, as I mentioned before, this is going to be focused on having a new OCI tenancy. Please, if you do have questions about an existing tenancy that you have, realize that you need a VCN, you need licensing and access to be able to install Oracle Data Science, an ADW, and an OAC instance. So it's doable. Just realize it might take us a little bit of time to keep up with making sure that the other parts that you don't yet have created yet, and you might even drop a note in the Q&A if you have a question about running the Terraform script on an existing compartment. Okay, so we've talked about registering for the trial. You should have logged in and went through the registration process. Just remember, at any point in time, if you get stuck, you can go to cloud.oracle.com. That's going to get you back to your tenancy. Sometimes, you know, depending on which part of the products you're in, it'll open a new tab. So at any time, if you need to get back to the home page, go there. And you will need to be able to register for this API key, which is out on Rapid API. And by doing this free trial, you will get some bonus swag, not available for Oracle employees, but you can, if you're not a Oracle employee, get extra swag for signing up for the free trial. Okay, so this is the process where whatever email you registered for this event with is going to be the email you need to sign into. So the whitelisted sign up is done by the email that was used to register for the event. So make sure when you click sign up here on cloud.oracle.com that you, in the email section here on that first page, that you use that. That's what's going to tie it back, and the whitelisting process is going to eliminate the prompting for a credit card, where you're going to get the $500 in free credits for up to 30 days or for 30 days. You'll select that offer once you go through and you do the sign up, and then that's going to initiate an email. So the email account that you use to register, you'll go back to and you'll look for an email from Oracle Cloud, will be the name of the email coming from. And then you'll have a verify email button. And when you click on that button, you're going to have to fill out some information and set your password, set a cloud account name, and read the terms and service and click continue. So hopefully the majority of you already have went through this process. If there's anybody that's just starting this process, can you raise your hand so I can get an idea of how many people on the call are actually stepping through this process now? Okay. Okay, I see a couple. So we're gonna wait here for just a couple of minutes for you guys to go through and fill out some of these questions so we don't leave you too far behind. And then I just cleared all of the hands again. Hopefully everyone was able to download the PDF that gives the step-by-step instructions. At some point, sometimes getting the emails and all the things together can take a few minutes. So you do have that document. You can follow along page by page of what we're doing. There'll be pauses that we make along the way that allow you to get caught back up. And at any point in time, you can reach out to the Q&A, like I said, or the Slack channel and ask questions. Once you go through and put your address and agree to the terms of the trial, you're going to get an active button that allows you to start my free trial. When you click that, it's going to bring you to a page that says, wait while we're finishing the setup. This will take a couple of minutes for the provisioning of the tenancy to spin up for you. And then once that is complete, we will get taken to the OCI tenancy homepage. And this is where you're going to have access to, over on the right, you'll see what your total credits are that are available, how many days into the trial you are. And through today's lab, we'll be stepping through all of the interface to show you how you go access different parts of the tenancy once you've got these products provisioned. You can provision them manually, of course, if you want. We're going to be using a Terraform script today to do the provisioning so that it accelerates and shows some of the extra product stacks that are available to get all of your environment up and running. So by the time we're done today, you'll have a tenancy, you'll have a data science notebook that's using a VCN to access an API and pulling in data, automatically writing that data out to an autonomous database. And we're going to be consuming that data in Oracle Analytics Cloud and doing some analysis. So it'll really be building it, that whole pipeline that will hopefully allow you to build upon it and have a great starting point, or you can start playing around with some of the code, maybe running some algorithms in data science on that code after, and playing with the database and OAC. So I'm going to go ahead. Hopefully the provisioning and all of those things are working. There are a few things that Samuel needs to go through to get everyone up to speed on preparing the resources. So Samuel, I'd love to have you cover and talk a little bit about all of the resource covering.
Absolutely. Thanks, Carrie. I'm Sam, and I'm going to help explain how we can get our stack up and running using Resource Manager so that we can analyze our NBA basketball data. Now, Resource Manager is a wrapper around Terraform, and Terraform is a way to automate the provisioning of stacks. So those stack resources, in our case, are going to be what's called a compartment, or a logical identity and access management separator for resources, and then also your network resources, so virtual cloud network and subnet, and then your data science notebook session, which is what you can use to process your data, and then also your analytics cloud, which is the platform that you will use to actually look at the trends and develop visualizations around your basketball data. Now, Resource Manager is a tool that actually is a web interface for this for the Terraform as a service. You can think of Resource Manager as Terraform as a service. And so part of the prerequisites that we're going to look at, and we're actually going to create, are going to be an authentication token for our Oracle Analytics Cloud. And so that's what we're going to walk through next. So once you're on slide 19 on your decks, you can actually click the link that's shown right here. And this will walk you through parallel instructions, but you can also follow through the instructions here on slide 19 of this deck, starting from slide 19 here. And what you can do is you're going to first create an IDCS, Identity Cloud Service application that will be used to generate a token that we will use as an input parameter specifically for the Oracle Analytics Cloud, or OAC, resource that is part of this stack. And so the steps start with opening a new browser tab and navigating to cloud.oracle.com and simply signing in with your user credentials. So Carrie has walked through accessing your cloud environment. So as long as you open your cloud environment, you should see a landing page where the top left corner of the UI looks something like this, except it will have a hamburger menu shown here in the top left. What you can do is you can click that hamburger menu, those 3 lines, and then you can start to type Federation in the text field. And then once you type Federation, you'll see the word Federation pop up on the right-hand side, and that will lead you to the options to manage your Identity Federation instance. In this case, it will be Identity Cloud Service, or IDCS. And then after that, what you can do is you can click the hyperlinked name that shows up as a listing under Identity Providers, and you can click that listing as shown right here, for example. And once you click that, you'll be able to navigate to this page here. And this page will bring you to the web UI page that represents that listing. And once you click this link right here, you will actually open the console for the Identity Cloud Service instance that's associated with your tenancy. Once you open that link, you'll be brought to the main console page of the Identity Cloud Service instance. And that will bring you to a page that has a section that looks like this piece over here at the bottom of this slide. And you'll see applications and services. And what we're going to do is we're going to create an IDCS application. So you can click the plus icon over here on this green card for applications and services, and we'll walk through the steps to create an IDCS application that will be used to generate tokens, one of which will be used for our identity or for our Oracle Analytics Cloud instance. So once you click the plus icon or you add an application, here is where we actually specify the properties of that application. Now we're going to choose to create a confidential application, and we're going to give it a name. You can name it something like Analytics Token App, as long as you can recognize it for later. And then you want to click Next once you've specified a name. We're going to go through these 5 sections over here that are shown. Now after this, we're going to actually click the option to configure the application as a client for now. And so then we're going to see that the UI actually populates with a couple of more options instead of just allowing you to skip for later. Now I'm looking at the Q&A here. There's no identity provider. Let's see, you should see Identity Cloud Service or something similar to that populate. I'm going to backtrack a couple of slides here. You don't see any Oracle Identity Cloud Service here. This should be available in everybody's tenancy. Okay.
Hey, Alex, what region did you install your tenancy in?
So that should be Ashburn. Let's see. Now I'm going to go to my own tenancy here, and we'll just walk through it a little bit real quick. Okay, account is currently being set up. So maybe if we give it a couple of minutes, we'll hear back again from you, Alex, and hopefully it'll be ready by then. So now back to the setup of our application. We choose a name for it, and we chose to configure the application as a client for now. And here's where we want to make sure that we specify a couple of checked items for configuring the client application. Now we want to select 3 boxes: resource owner, client credentials, and JWT assertion. We want to make sure those are checked. We also want to make sure that we're checking for allowed operations, the option for on behalf of. Once we have those options checked, we're going to scroll down on that same page, and there's actually going to be an option to grant client access to Identity Cloud Service Admin APIs. And from there, you can click Add, and then you can either scroll down and find the option for me, or you can simply type in the search field me, and once you check that, you select that checkbox, you should be able to click Add again and add yourself as somebody who has that kind of access. Now, for the next couple of sections for resources and for web tier policies, so section 3 and section 4, we are actually going to skip for later, and we can do that by making sure that the radio button is selected for the option to skip for later, and then click Next. And we'll do that all the way until the last section for authorization. And we're simply going to leave the enforce grants as authorization option blank there. And then we can click finish. Once that's done, you'll notice that an application will show to have been added. You'll see the client ID and client secret credentials on a pop-up window, but you don't need to worry about those. We can simply close out of that window. We're not going to use these items. And these items are also available at any other time. This application will give us the kind of access that can generate tokens for the analytics cloud, as well as other kinds of instances. It's an extra security measure for whenever we create certain resources through the API, so in this case through Terraform, as opposed to through the web console UI as an added security measure. Now, when we actually close out that window that shows the client ID and client secret, what you can do is you can simply click this button here that says activate, and that will activate the application that you just created. And once you activate this application, that's when we can switch over to the rest of the stack creation part of this lab. So this was a prerequisite for OEC deployment, Oracle Analytics Cloud deployment. And then the next thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to bring up the Resource Manager web UI page that shows the configuration options for all of the resources that we're going to provision today.
Hey, Sam, someone had a question about whether this will work with IDCS domains. Is there any differences?
Whether it will work with IDCS domains. Let's see, a different one IDCS domain versus another, or are we just simply referring to IDCS instances, all kinds of IDCS instances?
PJ, if you can help clarify any questions.
He said it's in the latest OCI native ICDS. I think he's, if he already has an IDCS set up, I think you can just create a custom application in there.
Yeah, as long as you have an IDCS instance associated with your tenancy, as long as you can see it listed in your OCI web console UI, you should be able to click into it. And as long as you see the option to create an application, then the step of creating an application that generates, from which you're able to generate tokens should work for you. But let us know if you don't see that option, because that's the option that we're looking for this. Okay. So for the rest of this part of the lab, what we want to do is we want to be able to use the link to deploy to cloud, or the button on this website right here. So for example, we can, if we click this link over here on our slide 26, we're actually brought to a GitHub Markdown page. And on this page, you'll find instructions that actually mirror the slide deck instructions for the resource stack provisioning. But the part that we can just focus on, since we already have these slide instructions, is to deploy to Oracle Cloud, this button right here. And you can actually click the button if you want to keep the page open, and open the link in a new tab. And what this will do is it will actually bring us to your tenancy, as long as you're signed in. Otherwise, you will have to enter your user credentials to sign into your tenancy onto the new browser tab. Since I'm already signed in, I am actually brought to the stack information page. And from this stack information page, here is where we're going to be prompted to accept the end user license agreement, the EULA. And then this page will be set to actually download the stack, which is a Terraform stack. It's Terraform scripts behind the web console UI. And this is the stack that we're going to be using in this case. It's called OCI, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Lakehouse Pipeline. And it contains all of the options to provision the resources that we need for this lab. and we're going to leave all these options blank. We're going to create the stack in our root compartment, which is at the tenancy level. And we click next. And so once we click next, we're only going to have to make one addition, and that will have to do with the token that we generate from our IDCS application. Now we already have all of our resources selected that we're going to provision, including the new compartment. So we're going to provision a network, a data science platform instance, an autonomous data warehouse, and an Oracle Analytics Cloud instance, all within this logical container called a compartment. And that is going to give us that isolation for our resources that make these architectures highly replicable within an Oracle Cloud account. And so when we actually, you'll notice that we can scroll down here, and we can scroll past these detail cards. These cards are detailed, and they populate whenever an option is selected in the box. But for this lab, we can simply scroll all the way down to the field called OAC IDCS access token. And this is going to be a required field where we're going to want to paste the token. So we're going to actually hop back to our application tab. Once we look back at the instructions here, I'm going to surf this deck right here, and we're going to see that this actually mirrors or reflects the experience that we just went through. So we accept the EULA. We make sure that all of these resources are selected for deployment, like we did. And we're going to end up supplying a field or a value for this OAC IDCS access token field. Now, this is where we can refer back to our IDCS application. So this slide on slide 30 here, for those following, this shows how we can access the application that we created before we set up our resource manager stack and click that deploy to cloud button. And so it just shows the steps of, again, clicking through an identity provider, in our case, Identity Cloud Service, and navigating to our applications. And we created an application. We called it, in our example here, Analytics Token App. And from this app, you can even, if you still have the browser tab open where we created it, you can even click the button that says Generate Access Token. And once you click that button, you'll see that you actually, you'll see that you have an option to create a token with either available scopes or customized scopes. We're actually going to click the option for customized scopes, and we're going to invoke Identity Cloud Service APIs for me. We're going to leave that option as it populates once you bubble in this customized scopes radio button. And then you're going to download the token. The token itself is going to download to a file called tokens.tok. And let's look at this question here. The account setup still is not necessarily still in progress anymore, but we don't see the provider. Let's see, it may be a couple more minutes. Alex, were you seeing that the account setup was still in progress? Once you download that access token, by the way, you'll notice that there's a value that will start with EY, and that's within the quotation marks of the key value in the tokens.tok file. That string is what we're going to want to copy to our clipboard. So in that file, we have a JSON object whose key is app access token, and then within quotes, and then the value is also within quotes. We're going to want to grab just the value, and it's going to be very important that we only grab the value of that object and without the quotes as well. That will be the token that we use to provision our Analytics Cloud instance. I'm going to stay on the screen for a bit. I see, Alex. I think my best guess on that one would be that it might just be a matter of waiting a couple of minutes longer, then it might have a bit of time to populate. I don't think it would be a browser thing, but definitely check again in a couple of minutes, in maybe 5 minutes or so. Now, I wanted to just emphasize that we do want to grab the value here without the quotation marks that start with EY. And it's an alphanumeric string, very long alphanumeric string in that tokens.toke file. And we're going to not want to capture the quotes, just the value of the key value pair. Once you have that copied to your clipboard, we're actually going to supply that as the value for our OAC IDCS access token field, as we can see in this slide here. Now here is where you supply that value, and that is the only value that we actually need to supply to get to provision our stack and get the provisioning of our resources going. Once you supply that value, you can click next. And provisioning the stack from here on out will be as simple as making sure that this run apply button is checked, and then you can click create. And once you click create, that's going to initiate the process of deploying the stack. And that will be about a 12 to 15 minute or so process. And while that process is happening, we're going to pass the ball here to Aaron, who is going to explain how to get access to your NBA API. Take it away, Aaron.
Maybe
Thanks,
let's do a
Sam.
quick pulse, Aaron, on if people can raise your hand. If you guys got through the Terraform part and you are getting ready to execute and create, if there's anyone at that state, could you raise your hand in the list just so we can get a pulse of how many people are getting to the stage of, I know some people don't actually go through the full lab, but I wanted to get a quick pulse on the number of people that have gotten to the point where you guys are executing some Terraform. Okay, I'm not seeing as many as I would hope. So if we need to stop really quick and go through the Q&A just to verify if there's any extra questions before we move forward, this is your chance to post some Q&A so that we can help you guys get caught back up if you have not started executing that yet. Maybe everyone's shy. Okay, I'll take that as people aren't maybe, I'm not seeing as many as I would expect to see, but I'll go ahead and pass it over to Aaron. If there's questions, please let us know. We can stop, we can go back and make sure you guys get the first part of this step.
Yeah, all right, thanks, Carrie, thanks, Sam. So what we're going to do now is simply register for access to our MBA API. This should take no longer than 3 to 4 minutes. We're just registering for an account. So what you're going to want to do is click on this link right here, and let me post it in the chat so you guys have access to it. So once you click on this link, you're just going to want to log in, and we're going to log in with our GitHub. But just so you know, we'll be using a public API to access the MBA data. The get all stats endpoint is being used for this lab and contains only historical information. The quality of this data is unknown and may not match official MBA statistics. So we're just using this to execute this hands-on lab. So once you're able to click on the link and go to login, we're just going to go ahead and put in our information for our GitHub. So click login with GitHub. And once you click on that, a pop-up should appear. You're going to put in your GitHub username or email, as well as your GitHub password. And once you're able to do that, I'll give you around 5 seconds to do that. And then you're just going to go ahead and sign in. So once you're able to do that, we're going to go ahead and put in your information and request authorization for Rapid API to connect to your GitHub account. So go ahead and just click on the green icon that says authorize Rapid API to create that connection between GitHub and Rapid API. And then as well as entering your information, your full name, your organization name. And then once you're done with that, you're going to want to click done. And you're set up for your account. Then this pop-up page should appear. You're able to see our free MBA, or you're able to see the MBA key. If you don't see it, simply just click on the link again, because you're already logged in, and it'll bring you straight to this page, or just go ahead and search free MBA API documentation as seen right here. But yeah, once you're logged in, you'll be able to see the Rapid API key. But what you want to do is go to the right where it says code snippets, and you're going to want to copy from the 1 to the 4. We're not going to use this API key right now, but we want to take note of it because we're going to use it later on. So if you want to just copy from the 1 to the 4 and then paste that in your notes or your email or something, just anywhere where you can get easy access to it for later on in the lab, please be able to do that. So yeah, once you take note of that, you'll be able to use it later on in the lab. So I'll go ahead and if there's any questions on that, feel free to post it in the chat and I'll be able to assist you further. But I'll go ahead and pass this to Brian, who's going to talk about the architecture for this lab.
Hey, everybody. So at this point, you've been logging into the cloud, deploying all these services, getting APIs, and haven't really seen anything yet. So what I'd like to do is kind of talk you through what we're actually going to be using to do all the MBA analytics. And the first thing to keep in mind is the Oracle Cloud has a lot of different services that we use to do this type of analytics for stuff like our Golden State Warriors dashboard. We're using these services, but we're using a lot more. Additionally, we're going to be using OCI data science to pull data, but we could build a lot more robust models for, say, predicting shots if you wanted to. It just goes beyond the time we have for this lab. So the core services we're going to be accessing are, first is just the API that you saw. We're going to use the MBA API to pull data down, but there's lots of different APIs out there, particularly around sports analytics. So accessing these APIs and loading the data into the Oracle Cloud is a very common step, and it's actually critical to integrating data into your data ecosystem. Now, to get everything into the cloud, we're using OCI data science. OCI data science is essentially a Jupyter notebook environment that's used to help people collaborate and design data science applications. Typically, you'll use it to access your data, do some wrangling of the data, but you'll also build, train, deploy models. We have a model catalog to store any model and the ability to infer data by calling endpoints that will do all the inference. So this is a nice contained service for doing data science type of work. And we'll load up a notebook that you'll actually pull all the data from, and you can step through that. Now, from the data science notebooks, we're going to actually pull data from the API and put it into the autonomous database. Now, Oracle's autonomous database is based on the very long-standing industry-leading Oracle database, but the autonomous part makes it easy to manage. So essentially, it's a DBA-free database environment where you click on a few buttons and you've got your database, and it will apply patches automatically. It will tune itself automatically. So as you use it, it learns what you're doing and becomes efficient. And what this allows you to do is, as you do more analytics, you need more power, it will automatically scale up and scale down based on your particular needs. And then finally, you'll use Oracle Analytics Cloud, which is our enterprise-grade visualization tool. This allows you to access data from various sources. So while we're going to be accessing autonomous database, you can connect to Excel files, you can connect to other database services, you can connect to object storage buckets. So it gives you a wide range of capabilities to visualize and analyze your data. But along that, it also has built-in machine learning capabilities, so you can embed that into your analytics without having to be a data science. So as you step through all these steps, in the next few steps, we're going to start going into these services and connecting them to each other so you see them in the OCI console. And we'll actually get to start doing the analytics in just a few minutes. So at this point, let's step over to our next step to actually configure the scripts.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick comment because Brian works in object storage so much. OAC does not yet support connection directly to object storage, but object storage can easily get loaded into ADW and consumed through OAC, although it is being looked at for the roadmap. So for any of you OAC people out there, you may have just gotten really excited.
So yeah, so I kind of, Carrie, I'll just add a little clarification on that. There is capabilities within the Oracle database to actually access object storage data without loading it into the table. So you do have kind of a pass-through way to it. So it's a little bit of a terminology thing, but it's
like
the benefit of the platform. Lots of flexibility for you.
Yep.
Great, thank you, Brian. So in the next part of the lab, what we're going to do is we're going to go and navigate to the autonomous data warehouse instance that we had provisioned through the Terraform script. And essentially what we're going to do here is we're going to download the wallet file for that database. And what a wallet is, it's essentially just a zip file that contains all the credentials for the database. So with this wallet file, then we'll be able to create the connection between Oracle Data Science and the Autonomous Data Warehouse, and then eventually just be able to push the data that we pull from the API over to the Autonomous Data Warehouse. So what you'll want to do is load up the OCI console again, and you'll want to hit this hamburger icon in the top left part of the console. From there, you'll select Oracle Database from the drop-down menu. And then go ahead and click on Autonomous Data Warehouse. And then once you're in the Autonomous Database portion of the console, you'll see this database right here with the display name ADW. And this is the database that we had already provisioned through the Terraform portion of the lab. So you'll go ahead and select on the link right here, on the hyperlink under display name, and that's going to pull you to the details of this autonomous database. So the page will look like this picture down here, and then once you get to this point, just go ahead and click on DB connection, which is in the top menu right here, and then that's going to basically pull up a little side menu on the right hand side of the page. And from here, you'll scroll down to where you see database connection and this download client credentials part. You'll want to make sure the wallet type is on instance wallet, and then just go ahead and select download wallet. After you do this, you'll be prompted to create a password. And this password is not going to be used for any portions of the lab. It's only here to make sure that there's some security around gathering the wallet credentials. I know there's other services that require you to put in this wallet password when you're basically accessing the wallet, but right now it doesn't really matter. We'll want to make sure too that the password meets Oracle's password requirements, which essentially just means that it's 12 characters long. There's a capital letter and a lowercase letter, as well as numbers. So a common password that works here is just welcome 12345 with a capital W, and then just add the same password to confirm password down here and select download. And once you download the wallet file, it'll essentially download to your local machine in the downloads folder. And once it's downloaded to your local machine, we don't really have to do anything at this part, but you'll want to make sure that you know where the wallet, where the zip file is located, because later on we're going to add it to our data science instance to be able to create that connection. So yeah, I'll stop really quickly. Does anybody have any questions when it comes to downloading the wallet for your autonomous database? If so, just put it in the Q&A chat. I'll give you a few seconds. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to actually fetching the data from the API and loading it into the autonomous data warehouse. So this is all done, as Brian was mentioned earlier, through the Oracle Data Science Service. So we'll first want to navigate over to the Data Science Service. So again, just select this hamburger icon on the top left part of the menu. From the drop-down menu, go ahead and click Analytics and AI, and then from there, select Data Science. You also want to make sure that you're in the Lakehouse compartment. So once you get to the Data Science Service, you can choose your compartment right here. It should already be on Lakehouse, but if not, just select the drop-down menu and basically next to the root compartment, click the plus sign, and you'll be able to see Lakehouse. And then right here, we can see the projects in the compartment. Essentially what a project is, it's just like a way for you to consolidate all the different data science instances you're running. So if you have multiple instances for just some specific task, you can put them all together in a project. So once you click on the ODS project, you'll then be brought to this page. Now these notebook sessions that you see right here, this is the actual compute instance with the Jupyter notebook running on top of it, as Brian mentioned. So we had already provisioned this through the Terraform portion of the lab, but if you were to deploy your own manually, you have the option of selecting which compute shape you want, as well as VCN and a bunch of other credentials, but we had already done that for you. So once you get here, just click on the ODS notebook session, and then you'll be brought to this page, which is essentially just all the credentials of this notebook session. So just go ahead and click on the blue open button, and that's gonna basically pull up the data science environment. You might be asked to put in a password when you do this, and that's just gonna be the account email and password that you set up for your tenancy. So once you open the data science environment, it's going to look like this right here. So the first step that we'll want to do is install a Conda package. Essentially what this means is that we will install a bunch of libraries that are required for the code part of the Jupyter notebook. Since we're using multiple third-party libraries. So you want to click this plus symbol right here. And just a quick side note on this too. So these Conda packages, Oracle basically offers a wide variety of Conda packages. So we already have a specific one that we're using for the purpose of this lab. But if you're curious and want to see sort of which libraries come in which Conda packages, you can select this Environment Explorer right here and then see all the different Conda packages that Oracle offers. But since we already know which Conda package we're going to use, just go ahead and click on the terminal right here. And essentially, this is going to pull up the terminal for the compute instance that we're running. So we're going to directly install the Conda package through a terminal command right here. So essentially, we're installing the Conda package called data exploration. So what you'll want to do is just go ahead and copy this command and paste it into the terminal. So it should look like this photo right here. And then just go ahead and select enter. And then after a few seconds, you're going to see a little thing pop up asking about the version number. You don't have to enter anything right here. Just click enter again. And this will go ahead and install the most recent version of this Conda package. So it can take, I'd say, about a minute or two to install this Conda package. Once it finishes installing, you'll basically just see a blank line in the terminal that says like bash 4.2 right here. So once you reach this point, we'll want to go ahead and activate the Conda package that we had just installed. So you can do that again by just copying this command into the terminal. If for some reason you're manually typing out the command, you can just type in Conda space activate space Conda slash and then select the tab bar, and it will finish the sentence for you since there's only one Conda package in here. And then once you activate it, you'll see basically the base right here changes to the name of the Conda package. So you'll see sort of this name right here in parentheses. And then the next step is to actually go ahead and upload the Jupyter notebook that we had already created for this lab. So the Jupyter notebook is stored in an OCI object storage bucket. So this is the link to that bucket. So again, in the terminal, the next command is going to be wget, and then just followed by this link right here and a space in between. And then once that finishes, on the left-hand side of the data science environment, you'll be able to see the directory. So once that finishes executing, you'll be able to see the notebook right here. It's called pyday.ipynb. And then once you see it, just go ahead and select it. And that's going to open a new tab within the data science environment. And that's where the notebook lies. So once the notebook is pulled up, the first thing to do is make sure that it's running on the Conda package that we had just installed. So it should look like this right here. If it doesn't, then just go ahead and select the circle right here, and there'll be a little drop-down menu where you'll see the Conda package, and then just go ahead and select it. And that's all you have to do. You should see a change then again right here. Now, what we have to do is basically just right here where you see the rapid API key, just change the value that you see to the API key that you received when you signed up for it in the earlier section of this lab. So you basically just go ahead and change this parameter right here to your own API key. And then that's really all you have to do for this part. You'll also want to upload the wallet zip file now that we had downloaded from the ADW. So basically just pull up the downloads folder on your local machine where the zip file lies, and just go ahead and drag and drop it right here. So this will just upload it to the current directory that we're working out of. And then if you scroll down in your Jupyter notebook to this cell that says ADW connection parameters, you'll basically just want to verify that after the home/data science/ that the name that we see here matches the wallet zip file that you had just uploaded. If it doesn't, for whatever reason, so it should based on the database name that we gave when we created the Terraform script, and nobody changed that value, so it should match. But if it doesn't, just go ahead and change that part right here. And then again, for password, you don't need to change any of this. This is the password that was given when we provisioned the autonomous database. So there's sometimes confusion of whether this password is the password that you put in when you downloaded the wallet, but it's not. You don't have to touch it. This is just the password for the admin account of the database. So once we do that, basically everyth's ready to go. All you have to do is select run in this top menu right here, and then click run all cells. And the way that Jupyter notebooks work is there's basically multiple cells that you'll see. And when we execute code, we're executing it one cell at a time. And then when that happens, you basically will see the output of that cell right beneath it. So we added multiple print statements in this notebook. I'm not sure why it's not in this picture, but for instance, in this first cell, the output, when you run it, will say like imported packages successfully. So you'll know that this cell finished executing. Then we move down to the next one. And I can quickly just run through what each cell does. So what we do is we first import the required libraries. Next is when we actually hit the API call. So we do this in a loop because based on this, just how this public API works, we can only pull in 100 rows at a time. So we basically do this multiple times until we reach like about 15,000 rows. So this could take, I don't know, about 8 to 10 minutes to run all this. But so yeah, just you have to be patient at this part. All the other cells run much quicker. So what we do next is just a little data wrangling. So we just make sure that that like numeric values inside these cells are treated as numbers instead of strings. Basically, when we do it, they're all treated as strings just based on how the API works. Next, we create the credentials for the database. And then the last cell is actually pushing the data from Oracle Data Science to the autonomous database. So again, this is just the output of each cell. So you'll see when this first cell finishes running, it'll say successfully imported libraries below. And then once the final cell finishes running, we basically go ahead and print the first 5 rows of the data frame, which is the same as the first 5 rows of the table in the database. So the output will be something like this. If an error message occurs as you're running each cell, that error message will pop up beneath the cell. So if there's any issues sort of in your notebook with any of the credentials or anything, you won't be able to reach this final output right here. And if that's the case, just put something in the Q&A and I'm happy to help you debug the issue. So that's it for accessing the data through the API and loading it to the autonomous database. Does anybody have any questions before I hand it off to Carrie, who will talk about the OAC portion of the lab? I'll take silence as a no. So Carrie, I'm gonna go ahead and hand it off to you now.
All righty. Well, everyone, you can feel free to put questions in. It doesn't even have to be about the lab. If you have questions, we have experts on the call here. They're happy to talk to you about any questions you have about leveraging data science, using these technologies in order to build out a data pipeline in your environment. Okay, we've covered quite a bit. We're going to jump in. Even though the data is getting loaded into ADW right now, the ADW instance has already been created through the Terraform script. So we're able to jump out into OAC and create a connection to the database. And while we do that, the script should be close to being done running so that we can create a data set and start looking at the data. So what we're going to do is go back to your browser for your tenancy. If you go up to the top hamburger button, you're going to be able to go down to analytics and see your analytics cloud service. this tool allows for you to be able to access tons of different data sources, import flat files, and organize all of your information in an enterprise environment. It's embedded with AI and analytics. We have some awesome new data insights that scans your data and creates visualizations for you out of the box. So we're going to do a little bit of work on pulling in some visualizations here today, building some data columns and data sets, and making some calculations. Once you go into the Analytics Cloud option, you're going to see that there's a PyDay instance created. Again, this is all of them from, these were created through the Terraform scripts. So if you're in a your own instance, you know, then it's not going to create what that is. And if you do something manual, you would want to come in and create an instance of OAC. Really simple. You would just step through and fill in all the data that's there. There's lots of videos out that are available for OAC that you can leverage from our PMs that will help you. Once you open that, you're going to go into the analytics homepage. This is a button that will take you right there. This is a browser-based application, so you can also copy the URL and paste it into an address bar. So either way that you feel fit, if we just click on the analytics homepage, you're going to come in and be in Analytics Cloud. So the first thing we're going to do is create a connection. So the connection is going to be a data source connection pointing to some data. And you can access that by on the top right hand corner, clicking create. Then you're going to select connection. You'll see we have a lot of other options that we can do here. The first thing we do is a connection. Once we have a connection, we can create a data set or a data flow. And then the workbooks where we organize our visualizations, and there's other administrative functions that can be done here as well, depending on your implementation. But since our data was stored in Autonomous Data Warehouse, we'll select Oracle Autonomous Data Warehouse here. And then you're going to be using that same wallet. So the file that was there, you can give your connection a name. I called mine MBA. And if you hit select, you can browse to that downloads folder or wherever your downloads area is and select that wallet. Again, the wallet that was imported was secured with a password that doesn't have anything to do with the credentials to access the database. The username and password for the database was set in the Terraform script. So if you were to go in and provision autonomous database, you would set those values. But since all of you are presumably using this Terraform script, you're going to be using admin and then welcome exclamation point 2345 with a capital W. So once you put the credentials in there, you will have that. You can read up on some different information around service names. You can use high right now. Typically, the more users you have accessing something at one time, you'll not make that as high because it may consume up one person's and make other people wait. Okay, so go ahead and click save. And now we have a data connection. We have access to reach that data that we have that's coming in on the pipeline from our API through the data science notebook. When you click data, it's going to refresh your page and you're going to see that connection. You'll see it has a little icon over the database letting you know it's a connection and not a data set. So you'll go ahead and click the NBI connection and that's there. So now that we have the connection, we're going to go out and analyze some data and work in some data sets. I'll take a quick pause just to make sure there's not any data that's coming in on the Q&A or Slack channel around creating a connection and make sure everybody is able to do that step. And feel free to raise your hand as well if you want to have us pause for a second and not wait. Okay, not seeing anything there. All right, so let's hop out and review a little bit about the data. So there's some basic elements. I won't go through all of these. The main concept here is that the API we're using, FGA, is inclusive of 2 and 3 points. So that's the total filled goals that were attempted. And since we want to do some analysis between 2 and 3 points, we're going to have to create a few columns in our data. So we have 2 and 3 pointers, which is FGA, attempted and made, and then we have 3 pointers, attempted and made. There is filled free throw information in here as well. So we're not using that for our analysis, but there's a lot of great data. There's player data in here, there's team date, lots of different information for you to come out and play with the data and do some analysis. Points that were scored and game date season. And then the way that API is laid out, there's a visitor team score and a home team score. And then just a first and last name. So we're going to do a couple of things to teach you within OAC how you can create different kind of calculations and case statements and formulas in order to render the data you have to get new columns that are useful for you. The first one's going to be determine if it's a home or visitor team. So that way we can look and see if there's a difference in, do you win more at home? Do you win more as a visitor? And then once we have that, we can determine based on the score whether the home or visitor team won. We'll calculate the number of 2 points taken. That's really just going to be the FGA, which is 2 plus 3 point shots, minus 3, which leaves us 2. And we're going to create our own percentage of shots made calculations. So in the data, you'll see that there are some percentages that come through. Those can't always be used in your runtime calculations, because if you were to take an average of that column, and those are averages at a row level, that gives you an inaccurate number. So the number of shots that are taken and made need to be calculated at runtime based on other filters and what you have in that data. So we're going to cover that so you can see how that works as well. Okay, so we are at the beginning step of where we left off from creating the connection. We're clicking on that MBA connection field. And what that's going to do is take us into a data set field. And a data set is going to be an organization of tables where you can define joins. We've just released the ability to have multi-table data sets where you can do things at a really granular level. If you do data blending in the visualization, it's on the fly, but just blends the data. So the data set here is going to be able to allow us to create a model that we can have other users connect into, and we can add columns and calculations to it. And those can all be used over and over again by other users. So go ahead and expand admin, and you'll see the NBA player data field that was created by the Python script automatically. And all of the data from that data frame got moved into that table. OAC supports multiple tables. We just have one, so this will be a really simple beginner exercise. We're going to drag the table over. You'll see that it'll become a table over on the right center canvas, and you'll see it actually does some profiling. It'll go through and tell you the distribution of all of the attributes and numerical values that are in there. If it has dates or some attribute, it'll say how many of those there are in there. So you can get an idea and look at the profiled statistics of your data set. And like anything, that when you get in and you have a new project that you're working on, up on the top right-hand corner, let's go ahead and hit the save button. If you hit the upside down caret, it'll bring up a little window and allow you to click save as, or you can just hit save. I called my data set MBA data. And that's going to have a baseline data set that now points to a data connection. And we can start building and growing out our model based on different columns that we need in our data to do our analysis. But first, we're going to hop out and we're going to create a workbook. That's up on the top right-hand corner of the screen. The workbook allows us to have a place to access all of these columns, create visualizations, and do some analysis. So again, we're going to go ahead and do a save as just so that we have our book saved. I called mine NBA analysis. You can call it whatever you want. Just know that by default, it's going to save it in your My folder content. So it's private to you and your username. But Oracle has a shared network catalog as well. So you can take and create folders and give permission to different roles of people within those to be able to share these different workbook and analysis with users. So just know that that's where it's putting it, but you can easily move it out to a shared environment and share with others if you were to add people to your environment. Okay, so now that we have a saved workbook, we're going to just get familiar with the data set a little bit. We have a workbook that allows us to access the data. If we ever need to go back into the data frame, which is kind of the root of the information we might need, we can just go back and click the data button. And so if you come up here and you click data, you'll see that it gives you a edit pencil within that the one table we have in there, one connection. When you click that, note that it's going to open another browser tab. And what this does is it gives you the capability to work on your data set, add columns, and at any point in time, if you come over and click save, then it's going to automatically commit those changes. And when you go back to your other browser tab that has your visualization, your workbook, it will resync and bring all those in for you. So you're able to work in both environments and iterate through changes as you're needing to build things out in your data set as you go. Okay, so to get started here, let's see if we have something. Okay, that's for Samuel. We're going to create some columns. So we're going to iterate through like 4 or 5 just basic, real simple examples, and there's going to be step-by-step options here where when we click plus, you're going to see a window come up that says create column. And so we're going to go ahead, we'll just go here forward. We're going to create a column, and you can just start filling in these steps. The name, we're going to call it FG2A, so that's going to be field goal 2 points attempted. And as you start typing, if you're accessing attributes or measures, you're going to see a drop-down list come up. And you're going to want to select that value. And if you have multiple tables and you have a measure that's the same name in 2 different tables, this provides also the table name. So that way you can differentiate which measure attribute you want to pull into your calculation. So again, we're just going to take FGA and we're going to subtract it from the 3 points attempted. Very simple. Just hop in, type those in. You can click validate. It'll verify that you don't have anything wrong. You can really tell that you've selected the actual value because it'll turn a color rather than be black. We're going to do the same thing. Field goal 2 for made. So now we're going to have the ability to have 2 and 3 point shots that we could do calculations on. Go ahead and just put FG2M, take the total 2 and 3 field goals made and subtract the 3s, and now we will have field goal 2 made. Okay, so we also support case statements. If you come back up and hit your plus sign, we're going to create another quick column. And if you select, just start typing case, you'll see the case if option. So you're going to want to select case if, and that will pre-populate the expression that we're going to be using and just have to fill in. But you can type case when as well. That's just a shortcut for it to build out and show you what we're going to be building. So the condition we're going to be testing to is the game home team score. If the game home team score is greater than the game visitor team score, then we know that the home team won because the home team score is higher than the visitor. So that's how we know who the winning team is home and visitor. And this is a really common scenario. Sometimes you don't have all of the data elements that you need and the everything categorized out of the box. We can do it here in OAC in a data set. For these types of things in an enterprise environment, you might see that move up, in your development cycle earlier and have case statements or, within your SQL within ADW that built there. So that doesn't have to be computed in OAC, but it's all capable. It just depends on how large the data set is and what the values are for that computation, because you can do nested case statements and you can do many when statements within a case. So just know that this is to show you how it works. The deciding where it works in the whole environment is dependent on what you're trying to implement. So once we have the game home team score greater than the visitor score, we know is home or visitor. We're then going to go out and do the team ID. So because of the way the data is laid out, we have to identify the score, identify the winner of the team and who the team is, so that we can tell whether it's a won or a loss for an attribute that we want. So same thing, case if, you can pre-populate it. You're really just taking the team ID and you're saying if it's the home ID, we know it's home, otherwise it's visitor. These are just interesting approaches to look at data and being able to extrapolate out additional information within the data that you have in order to have categorical variables that help you display the data in a visual, in a nice way. And then the win-loss. So this is the last one, another case statement. It's really just if the home visitor type, which is a calculation that we created, right? So now we're leveraging a calculation that we created a column, and we're using that to evaluate against another calculation in order to have a nice simple win or loss attribute that we can use to showcase in our visuals. Go ahead and validate and add step there. And then in OAC, you'll see up on the column, these are some examples of, for the different values, it's going to group in and show you some data quality insights. It's going to, show the distribution of what's the highest amount of values that are in the data set. Since we're using an API, we have some restrictions on the number of rows that can be brought back. And so there's disparate data years within this data set. I encourage you to go back into the Python script and review the documentation for the Rapid API. There's parameters you can set and set that to more current data so that you can learn how you can manipulate some of those API calls that you're bringing data in through and, merge that data down into a data set that you're looking for. For this case, we're just showing you and helping you build out the pipeline to get the data in there. For each column, you'll see that there are three little option bars here next to each name. So if you click that bar, you'll see a drop down come up, and we're going to go ahead and take this value that's coming in as a number, and we're going to make it a categorical season, because in basketball, it starts at the end of the year and ends in the spring. So you don't want to do anything by a calendar year. You want to make sure that you keep the actual basketball season together. So once we convert that to text, you'll see it actually switches the side, but we still need to come down to this bottom left-hand corner and switch it to an attribute for our use case. So this is just showing you a little bit of how you can navigate within the data set to change the data types. You can still have an attribute that's a number, but in this case, we want it to be an attribute. Okay. And then we're going to do the same thing for player. We have player first name and we have player last name, but that really just doesn't give us a lot if we want to drill down to an actual player name, because there might be multiple people that have the name Stefan, which there are. So we're going to go into our options here. You can scroll, by the way, below the, below the header name of there, you can use your mouse to swipe left and right in order to move your data table back and forth when it's wider than it is the screen. And then if you scroll to the very bottom, you'll see a little bar that pops up that you can use to scroll to. So you may have to navigate back or forth, left or right in order to get to that attribute. But we're going to do the same function. We're going to go to the option for that first name, and we're going to concatenate, and we're going to take and concatenate a new column called player name that has first and last name that's delimited by a space. And that way we can have that information be all one single name. So these are some basic just tools that you would use in data in order to merge content together. And so that gives us a number of different new attributes that we can use. And we're going to go up and click save on the top bar. If you are still going to be doing edits and doing more work, you can leave this window open. Otherwise, you can close it. You can always get back to it by going back to data and opening that window. But just know that you can move back and forth and click save. And each time you go back to your visualization tab, you'll see it refresh and go back to the metadata and bring all that information in. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to visualize. Now we're just going to create a few calculations. Like I said, we don't want to do an average of the averages that's in our data set. We want to go and create some new calculations that will execute at runtime that we're showing by win and loss, and we're showing by season, all of those variables, so that we actually get the right average amount or percentage accuracy for this project. Really easy to create calculations. You just right click add calculation, same window as what we were doing in the create columns. It's just within this workbook that it's going to be used and executed at runtime. So this is going to be kind of the process that we'll do. We'll define a name, we'll put in the definition of the calculation and save it. So rather than making a list, I'm just going to stay on this screen for just a minute. You guys all have the downloaded files where you can go back and look at these. As we're getting close to our time being nearly done, we need to hop in and create some visuals. So you'll create that add calculation for each of these, and you'll have your name, define of the calculation, and the description of what we're doing here. So I'll let you guys at doing that as I go over and show the last few slides of creating some visualizations. But now that after we have all of them done, you'll see we now have all the calculations available, and these are some of the columns that we created in the earlier steps. So now we have a data set. If we want to create something for other users to do analysis on, we can model that out, save this data set, and then give people permission to query that and come in and do analysis on that data. So the first thing we'll do is we're going to go ahead and go into that left panel. And if you select game season, you just drag it up to the filter. This top bar filter is going to automatically be an entire canvas filter. You can additionally just filter on a visualization, but having something that would be applicable to all visualizations is when you would bring that up to the very top bar. It could even be applicable to a majority of the visualizations, because for specific visualizations, you can turn that filter off as well, depending on what the implementation is. We're going to go ahead and first create a list of our team names. Once we have our filter for game season, I selected 2018 as my game filter. You'll see a list come up. You can select a season, but I use 2018. And then for the team name, if you right click on any of these valid columns here, you'll get a pick visualization type. You can also just have it pick the best visualization. If you have 5 different attributes and metrics and you say best fit, it will just create the best based on what those attributes and measures numbers are. But we're going to go ahead and just pick a list because we want to have a list of teams. So now we have a list of teams where if we want to do some analysis, we can select all of them. We can collect one off of each of them, but that gives us a list. When you're in OEC, you'll see that when you drag something over for the second time, you'll see green bars. And so these are all panels that you can decide where you want to place it on your screen. And it's not overly important in this lab to put them exactly where we say. There's instructions that tell you how to do it so that if you wanted to build exactly what we have, you can do it step by step. But it's more important that you're doing something that's fast. So just start dragging data over. Once you get it there, you can grab the header and move it around to wherever you want it to go. But we're going to bring up a couple of tiles. If you bring one measure, it will always put it in as a tile. So let's drag 3-point accuracy over and then 2-point accuracy. Now we have a couple of tiles that we can use that will be like a KPI. Next, we're going to go in and rearrange. So this is part of it. We're not important, but if you want to grab one now, you can drag it and have it move somewhere else on the canvas. You can see that I had here the 3-point accuracy or on the side, and I moved it down. So the 0.52 was over here on the middle, and I drug it down, and you can see it now has it below. The end result is they're now stacked. Now, if you grab a couple of items, you can see now it doesn't do a tile. We have a scatter that's going to be brought up. If we drag 2 values over to the center with our 2- and 3-point accuracy, it's going to create a scatter plot. But what I want to do is inside of that visualization, click the visualization type, because you can change any visualization type, even in analysis for users if you give them permission to do so. So let's go ahead and change that to a donut. The donut is always been kind of simple, but it's a nice visualization. And there's some new functionality where you can change the center radius of it to be really thin, have it kind of a new modern visualization, or leave it, closer to something that might look like a pie. So you can tell if a visualization is highlighted because there'll be a green line all the way around it. And when that's highlighted, the property panel in the bottom left-hand corner is going to provide properties to do chart titles, change the legend position, turn it off, change font types, lots of different things depending on the visualization. So just know if you're ever wanting to do edits to the formatting or look or feel or properties of that, such as not have the filter applied to that visualization, which you would click the filter bar, this is where you would do that. And then we're going to do, last time we did the accuracy, now let's do one for points. You can see it creates a scatter, we change it to a donut, and now we have 2 donut charts that we can change the radius so they match with a title bar and a couple of KPIs. You can move them around to however you want to position them. Again, this is not important. I'd rather see you pull some more data over and get the data. But we're going to move up a little bit. And we're going to select 3 items now. So we have the win, loss, team name, and points. And what we're going to do is we're going to switch the definition of all of the left grammar panel to have these set up. So you'll just want to follow these steps and place these metrics and attributes in the right place. And then by doing that, we now have a trellis where we start with win-loss, and then we can see how the 3-point accuracies compare whether you win or lose the game. The dark color will scale out the points, and then we put the team number in here as well, which can be swapped out with any of the values that you have in your data model. And then we're going to do the same thing. So you can go to the menu of that one visualization and duplicate. So rather than building it all over from scratch, when we only want to change 3-point accuracy to 2-point accuracy, you can duplicate it and then just take the 2-point accuracy and drag it over. And you'll see that we're adding 2-point and we're removing 3-point. And now we have 2 charts that show 2-point and 3-point. I again moved the bar down because I wanted to visually see with the bar lengths, which is more impactful. And it's a little bit easy to see. We know that if you, that the 2 points have a higher accuracy than 3 points, but we also see that you win more games when your accuracy is higher than 3 points. So I'm going to skip the legend position. That's not as important. But what I do want you to do is if you come over here, if the visualization is highlighted again, it has to be active. Click on the button here to add statistics, and we're going to add a reference line. And what that does is gives a nice visualization, which we're going to do that again for the 2-point accuracy. I'm going to skip forward here just a little bit because I know we're running short on time. And so what I'm doing here with the tiles is I just brought number of games just to let everyone know. If you drag number of games over as a new visual, then you can use the filter within that visual for it to still be overall filtered by 2018, but we want these specifically to be like number of wins and number of losses. So you can have a double filter there. And then the last chart that we will build is the win-loss for accuracy. And you guys can follow the specific examples, but what you'll see is that from the West, because we're using the team conference, we can see they have a tighter accuracy than what the West Coast does because we can see more blue outside of the orange. But if we bring in some reference lines here, again, if you bring in 2, it'll automatically default to your 2 measures you have. It gives you a really nice visual to see the difference between all the teams. We can see the driving factor is that most teams win when they have a higher 3-point success rate. We also can see, and I can see if I can switch over here to the live one. So we can see when you hover over, you can see what the overall averages are. So those reference lines are really nice to be able to look and see between 3-point accuracy of 0.49 to 0.32 between the wins and the losses. So this is a little bit higher, of course, on the wins. They have a 38% versus a 54% on the 2-point accuracy and the 3-point accuracy. And we can see that there's a little bit of delta, but it's driven a lot more from the 3 points. And if you want to go out, like for instance, on the 2018 team, the Cavaliers and the Warriors went to the championships, and the Warriors won the 2018 championship. And we'll see here that there was a pretty big disparity in the accuracy at 3 points, even though the 2-point accuracy wasn't quite as much. So, and there was more shots for each of them. And you can even put in, drill and dice into this data and go in and look at other parts of the data elements, such as player name and such. So, so that's the example of being able to build that out. You guys have the lab, you have the trial. Please feel free to, send a message if you, we can figure out how to, I'm on LinkedIn, Carrie Nielsen, feel free to reach out to me there. If you have questions, I can hook you up with the right people. If you want to ask any further questions, we hope this was valuable for you to learn a little bit about how you can create out a data pipeline in OCI. So congratulations for all of you who were able to stick through it, or once you do get done, you were able to complete the lab. You can share your event. The Slack channel is going to be around. If you want to use that for questions, you can go there, and all of everyone's out there and can answer questions or get linked up with you. There's a new Oracle Live coming, so make sure you go out, search for Oracle Live, and watch the Run Workloads Your Way on OCI. That's going to be tomorrow. And you can test your Pi knowledge. So bit.ly/pi-quiz-2022. If you earn a 70% on this quiz, you will get a not a certificate, but a badge, thank you, that you can post out on your social media platform. So we'll stick around here just in case there's any last questions that anybody has, but we thank you to Simon and Brian and Aaron and Samuel. You guys are amazing. Oracle's lucky to have your brains to do all this cool stuff. And thanks to everybody else for joining and taking some time out of your day.